Hello, uh, welcome back to this video lecture series on or the playlist on health education. And for this topic, for this discussion, we are going to present principles, topics on learning theories. And as we all know, learning is defined as a permanent change in an individual's mental processing, in his or her mental aspect, and usually involves his emotional aspect and behavior, and as a result usually of an experience. And usually this learning is lifelong. It changes over time, it evolves, it's dynamic. And as you go along in life, a person acquire new knowledge, new skills, and usually your emotions, your thoughts, your attitudes, your behavior, your actions are also changed because of these changes. And despite of the different theories, despite of the different principles, written resources, literatures, learning until now, its acquisition is are being debated, academically argued. And this what is sure based on the book of Bestabil is it is relatively permanent. Okay, learning becomes relatively permanent. So in this video lecture series, we are going to discuss three considered first learning theories. We have the behaviorist theories, cognitive theory, and social learning theory. And usually these three theories are often applied or commonly applied to patient education and healthcare practice, according to Redman 2001. Okay, so learning theories. Number one, we have the behaviorist theories. And according to De Young, the book of De Young, Sandra De Young, it's the earliest formal theory of learning during the early 20th century, and it affects the thoughts and feelings of a person. In this theory, this is to modify the person's attitude, the person's responses. The behaviorists, okay, the ones who believe in this theory, recommends that either you change, you modify, or you alter the stimulus condition in the environment, or change what usually happens after a response occurs. So in this behaviorist theory, two main concepts, two main terms are commonly used. Okay, the word stimulus or stimuli, and response or responses. Okay, so the behaviorists view learning as the product of stimulus conditions and the response that usually follows after a stimulus. Okay, and so this is known as your SR model of learning, or stimulus response model of learning. Okay, so if there is a stimulus, a response will follow. Okay, there will be a trigger and there will be a triggered one. Okay, so that's your stimulus response theory. Okay, of course, stimulus is the one who triggers, response is the one that the result. Okay, then one notable behaviorist theory is John Watson. Okay, he says that learning is a traditional one. It's objective and practical. Okay, so you must do it. You must put it into action so that you will learn from it. Okay, or you will learn it. So according to him, also according to his behaviors, learning is like a muscle movement. Okay, and since we're talking about behaviors, the end product here is a change in behavior, and according to these theories, the change in behavior is result of conditioned reflexes and all emotions and thoughts. Okay, so the change in behavior, according to this theory, is because of conditioning. Okay, mental conditioning and emotional conditioning. Okay, your thoughts are conditioned, so your behavior will change. Okay, so as you will learn. Okay, and again, focusing mainly on what is directly observable. Okay, and the behaviorists see that learning as the product of stimulus conditions and response that usually follows. Okay, so again, the behavior theories focus mainly on what is directly observable. Okay, and again, they view learning as a product of stimulus response learning. Okay, and another behavior theories is we have Edwin Goodtree. Okay, Edwin Goodtree. According to him, even skill, okay, like walking, is learned through a series of conditioned responses. So see the similarities, okay, of these different behaviorists, okay, different believers of the behaviorist theory, and according also to Watson and Guthrie, they emphasize the contiguity of the stimulus and response, and they are known as contiguity theories. Okay, so when you say contiguity, um, this is the sequential occurrence or in sequence happening, okay, of a stimulus and response, you causing it to be associated with one another. Okay, and okay, may I repeat that? Contiguity is the sequential occurrence, okay, of stimulus and response. Okay, sequential, so it's in a sequence, it's in a pattern. Okay, so causing association of the stimulus and response, they usually in the mind. And when you say contiguity theory, it suggests that forgetting is usually due to interference rather than the passage of time. Okay, you do not forget because, according to them, you do not forget because of time. Okay, because of the length of time that is it's in you, but because of interference in your thinking, okay, in your memory, and stimuli become associated with new responses according to this theory. Okay, and previous conditioning can also be changed by being associated with inhibiting responses such as fear or fatigue. Okay, and according also to Guthrie, specifically, contiguity theory specifies that a combination of stimuli which has accompanied a movement will on its recurrence tend to be followed by that movement. Okay, that's why they were telling that learning is like a muscle movement, it's like a reflex. Okay, so again, according to Guthrie, okay, all learning was a consequence or was a result of association between a particular stimulus and a response. Okay, so that is contiguity theory. That's according to Edwin Goodtree. Okay, then we have another theories. I know you are familiar, especially if you have you're done with your psychology. We have Thorndike and Skinner. According to them, stimulus and response also are strengthened by reinforcements. It can be positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement. It can be reward. It can be punishment. There will be a separate discussion also for this part of the theory. And thought processes are results, okay, of stimulus response activities. And according to this set of theories, it's a very simple change in behavior, very simple way of changing behavior, a very simple way of learning. Okay, in the education aspect, the application of this is by doing drills. The more that you do it, okay, the more that you are conditioned to do such procedure, okay, you will learn from it, or you will learn a procedure. The more you practice it, the more you rehearse it, the more you memorize it, the more you learn. Okay, so that is according to the behaviorist theories. Okay. So we have two types of behavioral learning, which I will be presenting here. We have the classical conditioning and the operant conditioning. Okay, so much of the behaviorist learning is based on respondent conditioning and operant conditioning. Okay, and respondent conditioning, also termed as your classical or your Pavlovian conditioning, emphasizes on the importance or the value of stimulus conditions and the associations being formed in the learning process. So you can relate this also to Goodtree's theory. Okay, right? So again, there is the presence of a stimulus, there is a presence of response, and there is a presence of the association between the stimulus and the response. Okay, so in this model of learning, okay, a stimulus is usually having no particular value or meaning to the learner, and usually it is paired, okay, to a certain unconditioned stimulus, okay, and unconditioned response also. And after a few association, after a few pairing of a certain stimulus and response, there is a learning. Okay, there is and there's association between stimulus and response. Okay, the neutral stimulus alone, without unconditioned stimulus, elicits the same response. Okay, and what is important here is the application, okay, in our profession usually, and this usually occur, okay, without thought or awareness. Okay, sometimes it's automatic. Okay, that's why according to one of the theories, it's like a reflex. If you happen to see a stimulus, you know what to do. Okay, because you have learned, okay, through that stimulus, okay, that you need to do this. Okay, so for example, using the intravenous fluid bottle, okay, you saw that it's almost empty, maybe a few drops and or few amount of fluids will be and it will be emptied. That's your stimulus, and your response is you are going to do the changing of IVF, okay, or the intravenous fluids. Okay, so you have the stimulus and you had the response to it. Okay, and when what's this? Consider also an example which also from healthcare settings. Okay, someone without much experience, that means usually when you say not much experience, when you apply these behavioral theories, the person has no amount or such conditioning. Okay, the less experience, the less conditioning. Okay, so this there is no association, okay, or less association. So that will mean there is less learning or there is no learning, especially if the nurse or the healthcare worker is working or is encountering this situation for the first time. Okay, so after the initial experience and maybe constantly or frequently exposed to a certain procedure, to a certain scenario, okay, the association becomes higher and higher, and the maybe emotionally, okay, the healthcare worker becomes less anxious, okay, less frightened to do the procedure or to respond to a certain situation. Those um, multiple experiences, multiple stimulus, multiple associated response will lead to learning. Okay, so that is the classical conditioning. Okay, learning to link two stimuli in a way that helps us anticipate an event to which we have a reaction or a response. On the other side, we have your operant conditioning. This changing behavior choices in response to consequences. Okay, the factor here is consequence. Okay, so as I have mentioned earlier, Skinner. Okay, operant conditioning is largely developed by Skinner, and he focused on the behavior of the organism and the reinforcements. Okay, that usually occurs after the response. Okay, after the response, not before the response, but after the response. Reinforcer is also considered to be a stimulus in this type of conditioning. Okay, or event that is usually applied after a response. Okay, that usually strengthens the chance or the probability that the response will happen again. Okay, so when specific responses are reinforced on the proper schedule, behaviors can be either increased or decreased. Okay, so we're talking about consequences here. It can be a reward or punishment. It can be positive reinforcement, positive response, positive or negative reinforcements. Okay, so but most of people would accept better reinforcements are the positive ones, more of a reward rather than punishments. Okay, so to further expound, okay, the operant conditioning model, okay, contingencies to increase and decrease the probability of an organism's response. So we have the positive and negative reinforcements to increase the probability of a response. Okay, so when you say positive reinforcement, we're talking about application of a pleasant stimulus. Okay, usually reward conditioning. Okay, so when you say reward conditioning, there is a pleasant stimulus applied following a response. Okay, just like a mother and his son, maybe, or a child. Okay, if she does what she tells, rewarded. Okay, on the other side, we have your negative reinforcement. It is usually the removal of an aversive or unpleasant stimulus. We have two types here, two subtypes. We have escape conditioning and avoidance conditioning. So when you say escape conditioning, this is an aversive stimulus is applied and the organism makes a response that causes the unpleasant stimulus to stop. Okay, so on the other side, we also have avoidance, okay, conditioning. This is also an aversive stimulus that is usually anticipated by the organism who makes a response to avoid the unpleasant event. That's why it's called avoidance, because the organism, okay, who makes a response of avoiding the unpleasant event. Okay, Then to decrease the probability of a response, there is also your non-reinforcement and or punishment. Okay, non-reinforcement is an organism's conditioned response is not followed by any kind of reinforcement. That's why it's termed as non-reinforcement. Okay, it may be absence of positive reinforcement, absence of negative reinforcement, absence of punishment. Okay, and the last one here is punishment. Okay, punishment is following a response and aversive stimulus which is applied, which the organism cannot escape or avoid. Okay, so meaning the organism, the person cannot escape punishment. Okay, cannot avoid punishment. Okay, so that is decreasing the probability of a response. Okay. So according to the operant conditioning principles, behaviors may be decreased through either non-reinforcement or punishment. Okay, and Skinner maintained that the simplest way to extinguish or to stop, okay, a response is not to provide any kind of reinforcement for some action, and that's your non-reinforcement approach. Okay, and while behaviorists while behaviorists generally ignore the internal dynamics, as we have said, they focus more of what is external, of what is usually seen or observable. The cognitive learning theories stress the importance of also what is going on inside. Okay, they focus on the mental aspect. Okay, and the key to learning, according to this theory, and changing the individual's cognition. Okay, you need to change the mental or the thinking of a person for him or her to learn. Okay, so the perception of the person is changed, the thought, the memory, and the ways the person process the information, the way the person structures the information is also changed. So basically, we are on the second, okay, learning theory, which is cognitive theory. Again, this is based on mental processes by which learners take in the way you interpret, the way you store your information, the way you retrieve also your stored information. Okay. And according to this perspective, to learn, individuals must change their cognitions or must change their thinking. So this is usually common or usual during the 1960s. This is the predominant approach to psychology, which is also applied to general concepts of learning. So we have the term cognitive science, a study of how our brains work in the process of perceiving, thinking, remembering, and also learning. Okay, and we also have information processing. This is used to describe this field of study. So meaning how does a person process, okay, structures, okay, from the initial encounter to such information until storing, or processing, storing, retrieving to apply the former information. That's all about information processing. Okay, so again, cognitive theories, unlike the behaviorist theories, maintain that reward is not necessary for learning. Okay, more important are the learner's goals and expectations. Why a person wants to learn? Okay, why or what is the expectation of a certain person? Why he or she needs to learn this one? The goals of learning this certain topic or certain concept, principle. Okay, and usually um, this creates imbalance, okay, and tension that motivate them to act if ever they don't meet the goals and expectations. Okay, so meaning the person, to maintain his or her equilibrium, he or she must meet the goals and expectations, and that's the motivation to learn, not rewards, according to these theories. So again, the focus of this theory is more on the mental processes that are responsible for the behavior change and the meaning of that behavior. Okay, according to this theory, also learning is an active process. Learners construct meaning based on prior knowledge and view of the world. Okay, because we're talking about cognition. We're talking about perception of things. Okay, so subsumption theory of meaningful verbal learning, Osabel 1963. According to this theory, new information is usually subsumed into existing thought and memory structures. So it does not say that it forgets. It's only being subsumed. It's only being attached to a certain or to an existing thought or existing memory. Okay, so you associate your new learning, your new knowledge or new information to your already existing one to form a new learning. Okay, so that's your cognitive, okay, theory. A meaningful learning is thought to occur only if existing cognitive structures are organized and differentiated. Um, and repetition, okay, of meaningful material and meaningful use of certain material, certain resources, certain application in various contexts would enhance the retention of that material. Okay, when you say material, it can be knowledge, it can be information, okay, or the learning itself. Okay, so the law of repetition, if I may term it like that, is very important in learning. Okay, you repeat it, certain information, you repeat it. If you want to learn a certain knowledge, information, you have to repeat, okay, for you not to forget it. Okay, and yes, in the long run, you will learn from it, or you will learn it. Okay, according to Hart 1980, there's what we call schema or schemata. Speaking of structures, according to this theory, schema theory or schemata theory, there are knowledge structures that are stored in our memories, and all knowledge is packaged into units, okay, which is called schemata. Okay, and people remember patterns of facts or visual, auditory, tactile cues because of these packages. Okay, because if you have been exposed or you have encountered this visual, auditory sensations, tactile sensations, this will be stored in your schema, and later, okay, if you have been re-exposed, if that's a right term, okay, or you have a re-encounter, you will remember it because of your schema or your schemata, your packaged knowledge units. Okay, so schemata is also like theory because your schema or your schemata will facilitate you to comprehend things, comprehend learnings, comprehend new information. It can predict what will happen because you already have that memory. You can predict events, meaning you will know what the higher chances that it will happen, okay, or what's about to happen, because you already have that stored knowledge in your schema. But schema is not always accurate. It can be altered also, especially if you have new information and you are going to attach another one, okay, remember the word subsume, okay, you will uh, uh, make a new information be one from an existing um, information. It's like mixing up two informations, okay, or two information to one, then you will have a new one. Okay. So there are three kinds of learning according to the schema theory. So the first one is your accretion. This is the learning stage. Um, the learning of facts, learning of new information, of new knowledge. Okay, and this new information is learned and added to an existing schemata or existing packages. Okay, system packages. No changes are made to existing knowledge yet. Okay. Then on the next one, we have your tuning. This is the start of the evolution or the change in the schema. Okay, and existing schemata evolve or are refined, are enhanced, are improved, okay, throughout the lifespan as new situations and issues are encountered by that person. Okay, so you will not expect, according to this theory, that your knowledge will be stagnant. Okay, the more that you live your life, the more that as you encounter day by day life, the more that you encounter situations, scenarios, okay, your schema, your knowledge packages will evolve. Okay, then number 3, restructuring. Schema creation. This is the development of new schemata by copying an old schema, old knowledge, and adding the new elements, okay, that are different enough to warrant a new schema. So you are going to add old plus new one, making another one. Okay, so that is restructuring, that is creation of another schema. So that's the 3 kinds of learning of schema theory. Then we also have, aside from schema theory, we also have stage theory. This is the information processing that is related to memory activity. Okay, I know this is somewhat more familiar, the terms short-term memory and long-term memory. Okay, information is both processed and stored in 3 stages. We have the first stage of the stage theory is sensory memory. According from the word sensory, it's senses, and when you say senses, usually it's only lasts for how many seconds. That's why it's said to be fleeting. It really passed by so fast. Okay, and the tendency is you may forget it. There's higher chance of forgetting it. Okay, what we perceive through our senses, if we do not do anything, it will be fleeting. It will pass by so fast. You have the higher chance of forgetting it. Okay, objects seen may last for only half a second. Things heard may last about 3 seconds, and if not attended to, okay, may be forgotten. If you're not giving focus on it, if you're not giving attention on it, if you're not interested in it, okay, higher chances of forgetting it. Then we have short-term memory. Okay, the second stage of this stage theory. Sensation. We have short-term memory. The sensation must be of some interest to the person or activate a known schema. So meaning from a sensory memory, okay, from a fleeting, okay, possible fleeting information, if a person is interested, it can go longer. The information can go longer from sensory to short-term memory. Okay, so whatever we are thinking about, or that which gives which is impinges us from external stimulus at any given time, and usually from how many seconds, 3 seconds, half second, it may last about 20 seconds unless it is repeated, because as we have said earlier, if you repeat a certain information, it retains longer. okay, to your memory. And that leads us to the third stage, the long-term memory. Okay, so this firmly tie things or information to an existing schema in the brain, or your knowledge packets in the brain. And there are several strategies to do to prolong, okay, the or to tie things into your schema. We have different strategies. Maybe some of it you have done it, okay, or you're applying it while you review, while you learn things. Okay, we have use of mnemonics, we have the law of repetition, we relate it to a certain story. You imagine a story, you imagine a situation in your mind. For example, we're talking about health education, and you put yourself into a hospital setting wherein you are teaching a patient, or if you're in academia, you imagine yourself, you're a CI and you're trying to um, put a certain scenario, the things that you've learned. Or for example, if you're studying maybe fundamentals of nursing, vital signs taking, you're imagining yourself taking vital signs, okay, for you to prolong the information, the learning, okay. Or you create mental association pictures, okay, or any type of mnemonics, any type of strategies, okay, memorization to prolong it, practical learning, okay, practical reviews, okay. So the focus on making learning meaningful and interesting and tying it to students' existing schema. Okay, as a teacher or as a student, you may these are additional strategies of long-term memory. Okay, aside from what I've mentioned just a while ago, we have elaboration. You ask the student to explain. It's not because only you are trying to assess or evaluate the learning, but you want him or her to retain it into his memory also. Then the learning by application, okay, you put it into practice, you make it practical. Then analogy, that's what I have mentioned last time. Analogy is one of the highest form of learnings, or highest form of memories. You try to have an analogy of things to certain things. So just like what I ask my students, make an analogy of a computer, a hardware computer, to a human body. Okay, the anatomy and physiology of a human body. Make an analogy of it. Okay, what to a person, to a human being, what is the monitor of a computer? To a human person, what is the heart of a computer? Okay, that's analogy. Then questioning also. Okay, if a teacher asks questions through recitation maybe, or simple recitation in school, in a classroom, okay, just to end a topic, so he or she may gauge, okay, if the student learned. But of course, that's not the only gauge or measurement of learning, especially if it's just after a topic, okay. In our case, in nursing, application is very important, okay. Then the simpler ones of summarizing, organizing, elaboration, or explanation. Okay, just a image, okay, of the stage theory. Okay, the input of information through our senses. Then we filter the mechanism. We have a filtering mechanism, meaning you filter out, you dispose what you do not need. Okay, what you seem not necessary to you or for your learning. Okay, you forget it. But then of course, sad to say, okay, there are instances that you throw away that it's actually important, okay. And but the good thing is you can relearn it, of course. Then from that filtration or filtering, okay, you have the meaningful output. Then you transform it to a short-term memory, and again you can dispose, okay, delete maybe, or erase from memory, or forget, intentionally forget, or intentionally or deliberately not to learn these things because you think this is not necessary, this is not important. At such time, what you retained as important topics, concepts, principles, learnings, make it long term. Okay, so this is a model of information processing. And information processing, just like what we have mentioned earlier, is a cognitive perspective that emphasizes thinking processes, thought, even reasoning. Okay, the way information is encountered and stored, and memory functioning. Okay, so that's all in information processing. Okay, how information is also incorporated, and also incorporated to an existing knowledge, existing information, and how you retrieve it. Okay, why do you need to retrieve information? Because you want to apply it. It's like how what's that? What's that? You forgot it, then you try to retrieve it, right? And you were asked to memorize or to recite. You were asked to do a certain procedure by also saying the steps. Okay, then you were mentally blocked. Okay, then you try to retrieve it. So that's part also of information processing. Okay, the important one, just like what I've said, is the way you use that information. Okay, okay. So and this is also very important for the adult learners. Okay, adult learners, because information is important to them. Okay, if it is applicable. Okay, if it's something that practical, if it is something that is important in their day-to-day life. Okay, then of course here the first stage in the memory process involves paying attention to the stimuli. Okay, that's stage 1, as you can see in the presentation. And attention then is the key to learning. Okay, if you do not really pay attention to it, you will not learn it. Okay, and usually what teachers will say, if you're interested to learn, you are going to pay attention. Okay, thus if a client is not attending or not paying attention to what an educator in a hospital setting would say, or a student, a teacher, okay, is saying, perhaps maybe the student is distracted, the as the student is anxious. Okay, this would be important for the teacher to explain it again. Okay, when the student is ready, or the student is more attentive. Okay, there's also a law of readiness. Okay, in psychology, I think, that the person is about to learn if he is ready, is prepared to learn if he is ready. Okay, he or she is not into learning if he or she is not ready to learn. Okay, but of course it does not usually apply, especially now in the undergraduate level. Okay, you should always be ready to learn. Okay, and in the second stage, the information is processed by the senses. Okay, that's stage 2 processing. And you can see here the stage theory of sensory memory, short-term to long-term memory. Here it becomes important to consider the client's preferred mode of sensory processing. You need to consider the person if he is a visual learner, auditory learner, or motor or application type of learner. Okay, and also to ascertain if the person, if the student, if the patient has sensory deficits. For example, he has difficulty hearing, okay, or visual difficulties, and usually he stays near, always in the first row of the class. Okay, or uses glasses or lenses, okay, to facilitate his or her learning. Then stage 3, we have your memory storage. Okay, and in this stage, um, the information is transformed. It is incorporated. It is stored, okay, in a short-term memory, after which it is either disregarded. It's like what I've shown you in a previous picture, being thrown out, okay, being deliberately forgotten, or can be stored also in a long-term memory. And as I've said, long-term memory involves the uh, organization of information by using preferred strategy for storage. Okay? While long-term memories are enduring, a central problem is retrieving the stored information at a later time. Okay? The problem is retrieving, just like what I've said. Okay? As an example, okay, if you, like in school, or in a revalida or bed conference, your teacher will ask you to recite the steps or do the steps, then you forget it. Okay? Retrieving. Of course, you cannot apply if you don't remember it. Then we have the last stage, which is involving the action or response, okay, that the individual makes on the basis of how information was processed and stored. Okay, it's your transformation, or transferring, okay, of information from your mind to application. Okay. Okay, so for the next video lecture series, we are going to have we are going to start with your cognitive processes that activate effective learning. Okay, and I hope you have learned something in this part 1 of learning theories. Thank you and God bless. See you in the next, or in the part 2 of this cognitive learning theories, the different learning theories. Thank you and God bless.